Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dan Nessel Show. I'm your host, Dan Nessel. Okay, I admit it, I'm an extrovert. I get all kinds of satisfaction from meeting people and from connecting with them in person and on LinkedIn. And from time to time, I've gotten carried away with network building, and that has become an end unto itself. But fortunately, I've always returned to sanity. And at least in recent memory, I've met and connected with people with a kind of mindful intent, I'd say. I'm in it for quality and for meaning and for learning and for knowledge and all that good stuff. So I guess I'm more interested in community over network these days. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We've explored connections and relationships before, and today we're diving right back in with a man who's helping to build a real community of business people. Yes, as my listeners may have guessed, I'm talking about the Connective. I talk about it a lot on the show, and for good reason. And my guest today is one of the leaders of this ever-evolving group. As partner and head of marketing and operations, he's helped to reimagine the group and engineer its rapid expansion across the US. A self-described business mechanic, he's a serious connector, a lifelong learner with a long career in marketing and business strategy, who also serves as the Chief Strategy and Marketing Officer of Atlanta-based consultancy Sales Marketing Results. I can't wait to talk about connections, community, marketing, and more with the one and only Adrian Sasine. Adrian, it's good to see you.
Wow, that's quite an intro. I might have to hire you to do that from now on.
It's gratis, man. You can have that one. I hereby bequeath it to you to give it to you.
Thank you. I'll just take that little snippet.
Just take that snippet.
Yeah, I have to talk. Yes.
I can cut and paste it right into your LinkedIn bio for you. We're all good.
Perfect. We'll give you credit in the corner, and you're good to go.
That's great. Yeah, look, I think that's actually even a part of what we want to talk about here today is kind of like understanding who the person is that you're talking to and meeting, as far as like connecting with them. You should have some depth of knowledge and understanding about why this person is interesting and why, what they have to offer or what you have to offer them. The only way to know what you have to offer them is to really get to know them a little bit. So I feel like I owe it to my guests, first of all, to at least know a little bit. But then again, I also feel like I don't want to know too much because I like to feel a little surprised in the show, and I like to get to know people a little bit more. And in your case, Adrian, we've met a couple of times. We're on the Connective together. Clearly, I haven't been as involved because I have, like many people, a day job and other things. So, and that's cool.
I know it's a resource. It's not a job.
Yeah, it's a resource, not a job. And I love it. I love the people. I mean, the number of guests I've had from the organization should be a clue to anybody listening that I do appreciate it. And I feel like the quality of the connections I'm making is real. I'm just really like curious to learn more about your thinking about this, about like how you came around to deciding, hey, like, the Connective is my jam. And because you came on after me, and it was a real kind of, I saw it when you joined and how things started to change. And it's not that they were like bad before. It's just like, okay, wow. Now we're ratcheting it up into like a real professional organization. So you brought a lot to the table. I'd love for our listeners to get to know you. Let's talk about you. Like, how'd you get there and why are you so interested in connecting?
Yeah, it's so funny. So, I'm a marketer at heart, right? So actually, I consider myself an inventor. And I find that inventing and business coaching, which like you talked about the sales marketing stuff, they go together, right? Like you see a problem, fix a problem. It's kind of like, it's a very male thing, but it's also like there's a personality trait there. So I'm a marketing guy, undergrad, 10 years in corporate, where I kept hitting that, whoa, you got to slow down there, right? Like, oh, we can't do that yet. It was like, oh, this bureaucracy is killing me. So I left. I was serving on the board and ended up going to a small kind of organization, ended up owning my own like branding business for 9 years and sold it right before COVID. And people are like, well, obviously it was great timing. I'm not normally known for timing like that, but it was perfect. And I got out because I felt underutilized. I felt like I was capable of so much more. And I was running this kind of small, while profitable company. I mean, certainly was able to live on it and put the kids through, nice private schools, but it wasn't what I wanted long term. And so what I realized is that people come to me with ideas, right? And I'm the guy that is always like, hey, what do you think of this? Or why isn't this working? And so I kind of, played into that a little bit and started doing my business coaching. And I was like, okay, I like this. I said, but the one thing I didn't like about business coaching is, first of all, it's become the trendy thing, right? Is everybody's a consultant and coach now. And I'm not saying that they're not qualified. I'm just saying that there is a surplus. The bigger thing that I found with it is to be a full-time coach, you have to convince people they're not as good as they should be.
Interesting.
And I don't, that's not my job, right? I don't enjoy saying, you know what, Dan, your show's pretty good, but it could be a hell of a lot better.
It's not, it could be.
Right. So
yeah,
that's not, so I look at it, I always used to say when I was coaching, I was like, okay, you got 10% of people that they're doing really lousy. They know they're doing lousy. They want help. You got 10% of people that are doing great and they think they can do better and they're happy to pay for help there. 80% in the middle, they just go to work, they go home, they kiss their wife, they play with their kids, they're happy, they're fine. Like, they're not like, ooh, I got to get to that next level.
Mm-hmm.
Can't work with those people, right? Because you'd have to convince them. So if I get one on the 10 on either side, I love working with them. I love peeling back the layers. But what I realized is that part of my doing that is, always looking for businesses. I was looking to buy another business. I was I was helping other people evaluate their businesses. And what I realized is I'm really good at looking at something and pouring gasoline on it with both money and sweat equity and growing it. So I did it with a SaaS company for a while. That kind of engagement ended, and that's a whole story of its own. But essentially, the partner and I didn't see eye to eye, even though we had like magical 80% growth in 2 months and like at a higher price point, and we were killing it. But it was like ultimately he and I were not to stay together.
We could put a pin in that because what you're saying there is the relationship was the basis of the business, right?
Absolutely.
Which kind of is a foreshadowing of kind of where you went with relationships being, of course, the base of business. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And it's funny. I'm like, I consider myself creative, but I'm also more operational. And that's where Joe Mendak is my partner in the Connective. And he is more creative sales. So we work together very well there, is that we're both the marketing background, but from different kind of avenues. But yeah, I mean, Joe and I met over a LinkedIn message.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, and literally it was, maybe no different than you. It was like, hey, listen, I, run the Connective. It's a, business to business referral program, how all high level people, very different than the purple gorilla out there of the other one.
Yep.
It's not local, it's worldwide. And he was like, you should check it out. And I came and I was blown away.
Yeah.
Like I've been to many networking events, companies, blown away. And it was 2 things. And you already kind of talked about them. One was the quality of people, right? This was not the low level person that just got into just became a mortgage broker and needs to get his first deal. I mean, this was all people that do this professionally and are experts and are VP level sales and above, or owners, or something like that.
Nice
and
mix.
then the thing that absolutely got me was the intentionality. I was like, whoa. Because typically, and again, foreshadowing a little bit with the networking is, for most people, is about what's in it for me, right? I'm networking with you because I want something. And I found that this group, very different. Like, they truly were all what I say is a personality type, which is, how can I help you? Now, listen, is everybody in the group have a sales job of some sort? Like, yeah, of course. Like, everybody wants to, build their own book of business.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, what I tell people oftentimes when I'm meeting with them is, if I see something on Facebook and I know a good connection, take money out of it, take recognition out of it, I'm going to be very quick to say, yeah, use this window replacement company. I get nothing from it, right? Yeah,
you might say that one of the differentiators anyway of the Connective, and I suppose any organization that you feel an affinity with, is it's a values-based organization in many ways. And not to keep promoting the Connective, although I will continue to do that. It's just great. It's a great group. But the idea is that, and I felt the same way, nobody's going to come and give me the bull rush on a pitch.
Right.
I've been to those quote unquote networking groups, and I've seen the evolution of networking when it was like the thing to do, like 20 years ago, right? Oh, there's these tools online. Let's network. Let's add names. Let's get people in here. And oh my gosh, who are you connected to? And that, like I said, that became an end unto itself. But that started to kind of yield really horrible results after a while, because, the you have early adopters who are all generally similar minded. It's a misrepresentation of all of the business world. Then as it starts to represent the business world more, that lets in, all kinds of people who you would never be associated with. And by nature, it sort of, changes the calculus of your network. So values, right? Values become more important. And especially as we get a little older and we understand more about where we are and get more self-aware, I don't want to be associated with a group that's going to pressure me into like selling for them, or it's going to put a number on me and say, hey man, you didn't introduce 5 people this month. It's not this, you need to keep growing the group. Not for me. The Connective never was like that.
Which creates disingenuous connections anyway.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're like, oh, like I could have gotten that name out of a phone book.
100%. Right?
Like, hey, I got a lead for you. You should call. No, that's not a lead.
Yeah.
Right? Like I could literally go in the phone book and look that one up.
Yeah. And it's the values based. So like shared your values. And that intentionality, it's like exactly right. The people who are there they're not fucking around. Let's just put it that way. They're just not there to play.
Correct.
Right. But they are there to make emotional connections and meaningful connections. And maybe we can talk about that a little bit, because I think people get confused out there. Like, you can't have a business connection that's also personal or that's also emotional.
Right.
I think that we've really disproven that. I think it's over and over again.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But, that's where you went.
What's the quote? Your network is your net worth, right?
Yeah.
Like, it is who you surround yourselves by. And I was looking at the Gary Vee the other day. It was like, listen, you want to change your life? Look at the 5 people around you, get rid of the one that isn't helping you. And it was like, yeah, it's so true. And I would venture to say that everyone in the group has great connections, right? Like beyond the group, from their home, from their wherever, but they enjoy the process. And so I think when as an outlet to do it more and do it with that intentionality of this one's business oriented, I think it's a good fit.
Yeah. And I like the idea that you and Joe complement each other. And I think that's another important part of this thing is you have to be, with people who are with a diversity of people in all respects.
Right.
So, there's diversity of location, diversity of role, diversity of race, ethnicity, all that kind of stuff. But really, it's that diversity of job and of I guess thinking in some ways around business.
Yeah.
And diversity of roles. I think that's really kind of very different about the Connective in some ways, but also, quite rewarding.
Yeah. A lot of networking groups, like some are just educational, right? Like here, everybody's going to go through this. Some are business development like ours, and some are kind of peer advisory. And I think we kind of blend all of them. Does everybody, like I said, does everybody have a business development type role that they need to fill? Of course. Like that is why you join a networking group, but there is more to get out of it.
Yeah. It's a tremendous organization. So, but you joined, and so you started to get into it, Joe. Yeah.
Joe met, I guess to rewind a little bit. I met on a connection on a LinkedIn message, and it was like, hey, you want to check out a meeting? And I was blown away. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll join. Absolutely. And again, I was doing the business coaching, and it was like, Joe was like, okay, well, let's talk. Maybe you'll join. And then maybe in the future, you'll launch the Atlanta chapter.
Right.
And, again, cities don't really matter because we're countrywide, we interact, but we kind of call the chapters names, wherever the person lives. And I was like, okay. And it instantly hit me. And I was like, this is one of those businesses that I come across that I pour gasoline on. I'm like,
right.
Great business, great foundation. He needs help. And luckily for Joe, and I think, again, that is why we get along so well, is he knows himself very well. And he was like, yeah, I'm a salesman. He's like, I'll talk to anybody. I'll get him to sign up. He's like, the stuff on the back end, he's like, I struggle. And I'm like, yeah, I happen to be really good at that. And so that's when we started talking. And so, we've grown. I think we were like, 40, 50 people when I joined. We're, 110, we'll be 150 by the end of the year. But we still say no a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's the key is that, we have a lot of people that will come and check it out. And, first we do a pretty good job of filtering to even get you to that point. But sometimes people still come and then we even have sometimes people get biased and they'll join, and we're not shy to kick them out. Matter of fact, we actually had one member that we told not to come back just a couple of weeks ago, who was our most profitable member to date.
Interesting.
And Joe and I looked at it and we said, this person does not walk and talk Connective, right? Like he's not coming, there's no participation in meetings. He could care less about meeting other people. It was all what was in it for him. And we said, you know what? While extremely profitable, that's not the community we want.
Yeah.
And so we told him to go.
Yeah. I mean, it should be a kind of, I think, reiterated for our listeners here that, like other connection groups, business referral groups, business networking groups, the Connective does require a little skin in the game. You have to pony up to get in.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's part of life, right? You get out what you put in.
Yeah, and there's a membership fee, and that keeps a level of seriousness in the organization. And then there is a rewards-based system for making referrals among the members, for sharing business leads. And because were it not for the Connective, those leads would not exist. So therefore, there's a certain amount of sharing that happens. And it's a beautiful model, and it works very nicely. People all agree to it. It works out well. So when we say, for example, when you're saying that you say no to people, or that you restrict membership, there is a revenue piece to that.
Right.
You're not only like that person who you kicked out or who you just refused to renew. When you say he was biggest deal maker, biggest revenue, he was generating revenue for the Connective.
Oh, absolutely.
And you set him out, right? It's not just for himself, right? So.
Oh, no. Yeah. No. For the Connective.
Yeah.
I mean, he was genuinely, like I said, he had closed the most deals of anyone.
Yeah.
And it was like, again, I mean, Joe and I looked at it and we're like, are we talking here from a profitability revenue perspective, or are we talking about what we really want to build?
Yeah.
And it was like, we were both very quick to say, no, this is what we want to build.
Yeah.
If we can't show up to do, in that space, then we can't expect somebody else to do it.
Yeah. And I get that from you guys and from the meetings. And like I said, you've taken it to another level, especially with like member communications and making sure that people are connected to, like, regularly connected to it through newsletters, through social media activity, and just a variety of things that a business does as they grow and wants to keep a clientele. Yeah.
This is not people's primary income. This is not their full-time job, right? So like, I get that, I got to push, but I can't push too hard.
Yeah.
And again, I think we do a pretty good job of keeping people that are good people, but people, people ebb and flow, like sometimes somebody's a good member and then they kind of fall off because they get busy or family or whatever. I mean, that's to be expected.
Yeah. But core to the whole thing is back to this values, is this idea of intentionality, right? And that we connect with people for a variety of reasons, but in the Connective, it's an intentional way of connecting with people, but it's quality, and it's trying to find, or trying to make sure, ensure, I suppose, there's meaning there.
Right.
And that meaning, I guess, reveals itself in several ways. And I can see that you've got something to say about that, but I wanted to kind of, in the context of like, how did you get to the point really where you knew that this whole idea of meaningful connections is the thing, is worth pouring gasoline over?
It's funny. I've done a lot of things, right? So my personal mantra is push myself hard enough that I will fail. And when I do, and believe me, I have failed more than more people are willing to put themselves in that situation, it's fall forward. That's my mantra, fall forward, right? Like, you're going to screw up. It's not all going to go your way. As long as you learn from it and you take a step forward, great. And it hit me when Joe and I started talking, and I'll talk about kind of the future of the Connective in a minute. It really hit me that everything I'd ever done before, like I was a goal setting speaker. I used to, I did, I worked in corporate. I ran my own business. I used to plan events. Like I have always been big into networking. Like it all, for the first time in my life, came together. And I was like, wow, this is me. And my goal has always been to build a giant business. I don't care. I'm not a money person. So I don't care that what I drive. I don't care what I live in. My goal, my definition of success, and everybody's definition of success is vastly different. Mine has always been, I want to build something. I enjoy that process of building. And so I kind of looked at it and I was like, okay, I see the roadmap. It hit me right away. I was like, I see the roadmap. And Joe was on board as far as, we saw eye to eye on what that roadmap could be. And so then I was like, okay. The thing I was chomping at the bit to say before was like, I was like, come on, finish up, Dan, finish up. Listen, like I'm a big LinkedIn user. We all are, right? LinkedIn is awesome. But LinkedIn is not about connecting.
Right.
It's just about, it is networking, right? You're like, oh, I meet someone, but it stops at the connection, right? Most of the time, like maybe you send them a message and then you're off the platform, right? You're somewhere else. And, listen, let's be honest, maybe 1 out of 1,000 of like your LinkedIn, are you actually doing something with later on? So the difference between networking and connecting is taking it a step further. How can I help you, getting to know you? And that's what we're really trying to build. There are lots of tools out there for networking, right? But people, especially with our digital reliance these days and the way we work, and less, there are less people even hanging out in an office these days, right? Like, so as I was doing some research a while ago, it was like 9 out of the 10 ways that most people meet each other has changed. Right? Like you're not doing these things out in public anymore, and you're not hanging with your friends, and you're not in the office. And so everything has become very focused on you're doing it digital. I think ultimately that's our goal, is to build these really connective communities, right? And we've started to look at the Connective as the beta for that. And as I said, I'll surprise you in a little bit. So this is where we'll be in, a year, really, is we took a step back and we said, you know what? The way we intentionalize things, right? Yes, we use money as that glue that holds you together, but that's capitalism, right? That's society. And so what we decided was, wait a minute, every other group needs that as well. There are no good tools out there, right? Like, so people that want to do it on their own, like they don't have the ability. So we are actually taking what we call our MVP software, right? So, what we use in the Connective, and we're pouring gasoline on it, right? So we are completely rebuilding it as an enterprise SaaS, where if Dan has 50 people that he wants to connect with, great, he forms his own little community. And it's multi-tenancy. So you could be a member of, and I see you're chomping to talk now too.
Oh, it's beautiful. That's a great idea. Yeah.
So you could be a member of your college alumni, your kid's school, your country club, your networking group, your own networking group, all of it working within one system. And so we're building it right now. And, we'll roll it out to the Connective in November, and we should have a full enterprise launch in January-ish.
So you're taking the learnings from the Connective and trying to operationalize that in a software platform, essentially.
Yeah,
right
absolutely.
now.
Everybody has the ability to work in that way. And I'll give you a great case study.
Sure.
I'll do this one first. This one was a total surprise to me, because we hired a market research firm who was out interviewing people. And so we were talking to a guy that runs like he cuts grass, right? He runs a little lawn guy. Mm-hmm. And he's like, listen, he's like, all I do is lawn. He's like, I'll call in my tree guy. He's like, I'll call in my sprinkler guy. And he's like, they're supposed to kind of, send me a referral fee. He's like, I never know if they do. I don't know if they come out. And so it was like, oh my God, what if you had a system that you could literally put it in, send it to them, and as soon as they do it, like they would update you on it. And then if they close it, it automatically takes the money from them and puts the money to you. He was like, oh, that'd be awesome. Like, okay, that's great. That's what we're building. And it was like, that one was a surprise. We didn't see that case study. Where we originally saw it was obviously our own networking group, other networking groups, but school alumni. Dan, where'd you go to college?
Sure. Penn.
Penn. All right. You went to Penn. I'm sure you're a member of like the College Alumni Association, right?
Sure. Yeah.
How well do you actually know the other business owners in your College Alumni Association?
Only the ones that I was connected with at college, right?
Correct.
Only my friends.
Very few. So again, within this, what we're calling Nolodex, which is the name of the software, you could go into that community, right? And you could be like, let's just say somebody that needs a website. You could go into that community, look what other Penn people build websites, send them a referral. Be like, here, I got the, why don't you bid on this project? I got somebody that does it. And if they do, when they close that, some of the money that they would give as a referral fee will go to the alumni. So now it becomes a passive fundraiser.
Interesting.
Right? So now the alumni is not only building engagement, it's building a business directory of its businesses, it's building a communication vehicle because it has Zoom and messaging and everything built in, but also it has a fundraising opportunity. So the school could say, listen, we want to raise, 100,000 for this new building.
Yeah.
And literally as deals start flowing between Penn people, helping Penn people, it essentially would fundraise this goal of theirs.
It's fascinating. And like, I keep thinking about the various communities I belong to. As I said earlier, like community is like getting to be the big thing in my mind. It's like, it's just because it's the natural, I think, progression of meaningful connection. My definition anyway, and I'm curious to hear yours, but my idea of what community really is a baseline of people you're connected with, that kind of meaningful intent. Mm-hmm. That okay, I'm not here just to have a name. I'm here to actually get to know people in a certain way.
Typically, it's around something in common.
Something, right? There's some common ground, and usually there's several shared values involved as well, right? And then that community is based on, like one particular outcome that we're looking for,
yep.
And everybody there wants to talk about the metaverse in that community. Then that community is, okay, here's my marketing community where people are looking at, the latest in analytics or whatever. I'm just making things up really, but because I actually do belong to a community where those things are merged, which is kind of interesting. But it's like they're popping up, but the other part of it is that it's closed. So the community is
invite only.
Yeah. Invite only, or the people who join are sort of naturally vetted, and there's an affinity.
And that's the way our system works. Like you can't go to our system and be like, I'm going to look up the Penn alumni.
Right.
Right. Like if Penn doesn't send you the link to join and then approve you, mm-hmm. then you could never join their community.
I'm trying to think this through, and it's the first time I'm hearing about it. So, forgive me if I'm not exactly fluent with my thinking yet about about Nolodex. And I'm excited to be part of the beta essentially for this. Question is though, like, aren't there products out there? Aren't there systems out there that essentially kind of do this with respect to like CRM, for example, or platforms that encourage community and connection, maybe don't have a commerce aspect to it, but like they're out there. Like there seem to be a variety of tools out there and platforms that I'm absolutely certain you've already been thinking about this, but what's the need that you saw that you decided to create a new product?
Listen, it's a great question. You're absolutely right. So there are community platforms that are just kind of, there's LinkedIn, obviously, to meet business people. There are community platforms that just help, communication. There is affiliate marketing type stuff, mm-hmm. right? What we've done is bring together this affiliate marketing for business to business, because most affiliate marketing is product related, mm-hmm. right? So we've built that. We've then brought in fintech because we have this payment processing that goes through it, right? So you've got affiliate marketing, community management, and fintech all together. And truthfully, nobody else has done it. It is, and for several reasons, right? So now is the time because fintech technology has just gotten to the point that not only is it capable, but it's trusted, mm-hmm. right? 20 years ago, even if the technology was there, people were like, I am not putting my bank account in there, right? But now it's commonplace. Everybody does their banking online.
Yeah.
Right. So that was a huge one.
Friction has been removed from the system, as some people might say. Yeah.
The gig economy, mm-hmm. The fact that everybody is looking for that kind of secondary income, and the potential, or some people would say we're already in the recession, the economic downturn, right? Sponsor money is going to be drying up a little bit. So now is actually the perfect storm for it. And truthfully, nobody's done it yet. We have, there are competitors that have specific areas of it, mm-hmm. but nobody has brought it all together.
And again, this is really do you see this going enterprise, or is this more for kind of smaller, medium operators, or like, what's your ideal audience for it?
Everybody's like, would BNI use this? Okay, BNI is not going to use this because it's against their kind of conventional value. But I know many BNI members mm-hmm. that while BNI does not actually have any money transacting through them, they do, they track it. They're like, they just published, I think, $64 billion of money that, but yeah. I know many BNI members that are trading money outside the system. Right. That are saying, listen, I sent you a referral, you give me a little referral fee. And, so what we think is we're going to get a lot of those people. They're like, well, we'll just set up our own little network and be able to easily, process this stuff. We do think we'll have a lot of networking groups. That's kind of phase one. And I'll give you another, co-working spaces.
Oh, sure.
So, co-working spaces is a kind of a tight-knit community, but there's really nothing out there that says, hey, here's everybody that's in my co-working space and I can easily figure out what they do. So that's kind of phase one is our networkers, our individuals, and our coworkers. And then we get into what we think will be schools, churches, that kind of thing.
Interesting.
Because the thing with the schools and the churches is they're not in that networking mindset yet.
Right. Yeah.
Right. They're in the community mindset. So our initial launch will be to people that are already thinking networking. Right. They're already thinking that. There'll be some education needed for the second phase.
Yeah. Oh, how would it work for a school? I guess as an alumni organization, I understand that, but like for a school or a church, like what would be a use case?
So, I'll give you a great example. I mean, again, my kids go to a private school. I've got 2 kids there and I know my friends, I know what they do, but I have no idea what other people do. Let's just say that let's say Dan and I are both in that community. The school has said they'd like to build a new playground, right? Let's say Dan sells cars. I happen to need a new car. Dan, if that referral or I know somebody that needs a new car and I send it to Dan and he's like, yeah, I'll take this customer. Right. And he essentially says, yeah, I'm willing to, whatever the percentage is, or, I'll pay $1,000 for if I sell a car. That $1,000 can go straight to the school and it becomes a fundraiser for them.
It kind of turns that whole, like, I know you have kids in school. I've had, I have kids, like there's always those fundraisers where you get the book. You ever see that? Like where they come back with the thick book, the affiliate book, like the affiliate program has marketed themselves to the school system to say, hey, we're going to give you a book of 1,000 coupons. The book's going to cost $25, but there's $800 worth of value in there. So, sell it for $30, whatever it is. And you keep all that. And then, we'll accept any of the customers you send us at those discount prices. Right. So the school or the organization is making money off of the books, but they're not like helping the transactions. I don't think they're not helping it's interesting because they're not really creating a community from that.
Correct.
It's a one and done. There's not, whereas this turns that on its head. Right.
So because within our platform, first of all, let's just say you're in charge of the pen, whatever. I mean, you could host meetings, right? You can chat with everybody. Mm-hmm. You can send documents. You can do all that. But here's a great one. The system will actually recommend people talk to each other. Mm-hmm. So it'll say, hey, Dan, you and Adrian should meet. Oh, and by the way, you're both available Tuesday at 2:00.
Right. That's a fascinating point. Let's talk about that for a moment, because one of the things that I don't think we've ever really made clear about the intentionality part of connections. And this happens on the Connective, but it's just in general, something that the Connective does that I haven't seen anybody else do. Because I think it's a small membership still manageable.
Correct.
As chapters expand, I think this will replicate more. But it's the one-on-one, right? It's the idea that you're part of this community and therefore you should meet the other community members.
Right.
So it's almost become kind of I wouldn't call it a requirement, because if there's reasons you can't meet with somebody, then there's nothing you could do about that. But at the same time, I think consistently ignoring those one-on-one ideas and requests kind of indicates that you may not have the intentionality to be part of this community, right?
And you're missing out. Like if you really want to get the most of it, then you have to meet the people. So
I've been, maybe batting 75% on these things, because of timing. But generally speaking, I love it, right? You get an introduction from the Connective, usually from Joe. It says, hey, why don't you guys connect? So it's your time for your weekly one-on-one. Here's somebody that you should talk with. And it's such a great little prompt.
And that's it. It's just that little prompt.
At this point, though, it's all manual, right? At this point, it's all like, let's put these, let's get these people together. I'm sure there's a system.
Spreadsheet. Yeah.
It's a foundational database, like old school databases. And that's cool. But to operationalize that, into a software platform, I think that definitely adds a different element to the idea of creating meaningful connections.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, like the new platform will mechanize that, let's just say it, right? Where Joe's not kind of having to do it.
Yeah.
And then kind of the next phase is machine learning,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where literally it says, hey, Dan and Adrian, did you guys know that you're both in the same two groups, but yet you're not connected on LinkedIn and you've had no communication through okay, you guys should meet. So that'll be the future, is when AI and ML say, wait a minute, he's got 2 kids that are 13. I've got 2 kids that are 13. You guys should meet.
Okay. So you're on LinkedIn, obviously, all of this stuff really happened. I can always draw a line back to LinkedIn for, if I have to fill in the blank, were it not for blank, I would not be part of this. The blank is often LinkedIn. So I feel like I owe it a lot. It has to do with timing, intentionality, all kinds of different things, right? But it's sort of like luck is involved. So like my case, the Connective, I have a very close friend and connection. Her name is Nikki Fielding, right? And you know Nikki well, right?
Nikki's amazing, yes.
Nikki's amazing. But I met Nikki on LinkedIn. It was a LinkedIn outreach 10 years ago. Yeah. 7 years ago. So reached out to her on LinkedIn and then did that real life thing that we do to actually deepen the connection. Actually say, okay, look, this is a person who is just of interest. And I think she's fascinating. I mean, maybe I can offer her something, that's, I wasn't selling anything. What I mean is like, maybe I can offer her like ideas and help or whatever. But I definitely want to ask her, I want to ask her more about stuff. So anyway, that kicked off a great long-term relationship that, she's a friend and a colleague and I've been her client at times, it's just been a great many years, and it's all due to that. So now, and then she brought me into the Connective, right? She's the one who said, hey, I have a friend, Joe Mindak. He's doing this fun stuff. Might be up your alley, at a time when I thought that it was, and at the time when I was like trying to start something new, it would have been perfect. Now that turns out that thing that I was starting new, I've put that on ice. Mm-hmm. But guess what? I still really like the Connective, even though it's not serving that need. Right. I find other value in it. So, so I want to continue with that. But, the point is that were it not for LinkedIn and Nikki, it wouldn't happen. So LinkedIn, just to kind of bring this around to where we were, LinkedIn now, of course, has evolved quite a bit. It's got whatever, 500 million users, 700 million, something like that. And it does have a recommendation engine, right? It does have like, here, you try to connect with these people.
Right. People that look at you also look at so-and-so.
People like that, or people who have common things in their profiles to you, mm-hmm. essentially, like sort of basic stuff. So when you talk about the next phase where like you're having, where your platform is going to do some machine learning, I suppose, and the AI is going to find people for you to connect with. Obviously, we're talking about a smaller sample group.
Correct. I mean, I hope I get to that size, but yes.
Yeah. Are you thinking of supplanting that function on like, do you think that's some sort of a competitor for you in some ways, or
that LinkedIn is a competitor?
Yeah, kind of.
In many ways. Yeah. Listen, I would hope that we're an acquisition target for them, in multiple years. Listen, LinkedIn, I mean, they could do what we're doing. That it's just not that's not how they chose to monetize their business, right?
They failed at community building, right? I mean, some people still, I suppose there are some groups that are starting to fire up again. I think they keep trying every now and then to do a group, but LinkedIn is just too busy for that. And for whatever reason, don't get me wrong, I love LinkedIn. I hate LinkedIn. There's things about LinkedIn that bother me all the time. And
there's always even the Connective. Yeah. I mean, we have almost 800 people that follow us.
Yeah.
If I post something in there, I get like three views.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's for whatever reason it's just not a priority to them.
Yeah. Well, it's the algorithm too. Like, it's LinkedIn. LinkedIn also always like kind of it's a graduated system of exposure. You post something, and then if you get a certain percentage of clicks of your network, well, then it's deemed to be of interest, and then they open it up. They open up the gate to another 500 people or another 1,000 people.
Fountain. Yeah,
keeps going, right? But look, LinkedIn has its faults. That community building part of it, though, that's kind of the grail. I've been playing around. Maybe playing is not the right word anymore, because I would have been playing around a couple months ago because I was just like spending a little time. But now I'm actually spending quite a bit of my free time with a couple of communities that are using Discord. So have you played around with Discord yet?
No, I haven't.
Adrian? I wouldn't say that it's like a competitor for what you're talking about. It's different. I think it could be the Discord platform could be something that, when the Connective reaches a certain size, it might be something of interest to the group. But regardless, it's like it started off as a gaming discussion board, right? It's like Slack or something like this. But the potential for it, the things that you can do with it, I don't even understand how far you can go. It's got bots, it's got like community, but it's been just doing a really good job of this community building. But just like anything else, it's really noisy.
Yeah.
Right. When you have an active community, it's hard to keep up with what's happening in there.
Yeah. I mean,
right?
Slack is the exact same thing. It's hard to go from between groups in Slack. And Slack's obviously a huge company.
Yeah.
And even, listen, that community is a hot topic right now. I mean, look at Lunch Club.
Yeah.
Right. Lunch Club, same thing. Now, Lunch Club, they came out of the gates. They were great. I think they have kind of dealt with some issues recently on, oh, wait a minute, I don't have as many in that sample size anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So now, and they changed their platform a little bit too. But yeah, I mean, community is a hot topic right now.
If Nolodex, Connective V2, well, Nolodex isn't going to replace the Connective, right? It's a software platform.
Connective will be one client of Nolodex.
So, if when Nolodex gets going and the Connective is still there, I mean, without community, people are not going to see the value of it unless they're already thinking community is kind of what I was thinking, right? But they have to be willing to accept that some sort of monetization can happen within that community.
I don't see a lot of soccer moms using this, right? Like at the end of the day, I mean, it is for referrals. It is for business development. I mean, it is a business solution software. So yes, I mean, it will connect the communities within something that they already know and want to be part of, but then filter down one more level to kind of the business owners of those communities. Yeah. That's our target market.
It's interesting because, we're trying to really operationalize different steps of the connection process, and, once you're connected with people to add and inject meaning and intent and monitor that and sort of manage that interaction.
Yeah.
And prompt and encourage that interaction in ways that are meaningful. I kind of.
And do it in full transparency. Mm-hmm. Right. Like, so that's the biggest thing about Nolodex is the transparency behind it. So every time anything, it's like a sales pipeline, but anything you change, that other person sees. So there's this transparency of, hey, I'm trusting you well enough to give you a referral. Now I'm fully kept in the loop of what's going on with it.
And it sort of just happens, right? I mean, once you're in the system, mm-hmm. It's not a set it and forget it, but if the referrals happen, you're in the system. So the reward just change hands.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the system handles it for you. So, mm-hmm. If I sent you that deal and if you change it from, to where now I'm quoting it, well, it's going to notify me and it's going to say, hey, Dan's quoting that deal. And it's going to say, I want it. And then, literally it's going to, talk me through and like, okay, Dan's gotten paid now. Like he's going to go process his referral fee. So yeah.
It's interesting. So putting the software platform, keeping that in the contextual background of what we're talking about here. The Connective is making strides. You've been connecting with people for ages and ages, as many of us have. And how do you see the way we connect with people either evolving or evolving further? You said earlier that things have changed a lot, and it's true. It's a very different world. And even I said earlier that I go through periods where like I'm essentially gratuitously name collecting, and then I come to my senses, and I'm like, no, wait, I'm looking for quality. And right. I think those days of gratuitous name collecting are far behind. Thankfully,
yeah. I mean, I take it to not even a 10-foot level. Let's take it to a 50,000-foot level, right?
Yeah.
That if you look at like the impact that COVID had on our behavior,
mm-hmm.
right, and yet people have not gone back. Like, let's be honest. Online dating is here to stay. People from working from home and on Zoom is here to stay.
Yep.
Right. And even I mean, like I couldn't imagine going to coach at an individual person, like the time, or even going to a networking, when I used to go to BNI, it's like, okay, well, 30 minutes to get there. And then I have a cup of coffee and then I have the meeting and then I schmooze and like, Okay, that was 3 hours. Like now I'm like, I would never spend 3 hours, right? Like
Yeah.
we are exactly 59 minutes and done. So yeah, I mean, I think if you look at it from that really high up view, that trend is not going anywhere, right?
Yeah.
We are overly digitally reliant. We are poor communicators. I'll even say, if you look at like guys versus girls, guys are not people that, hey, how's your day? And, how's business? Like guys don't talk like that, right? Like, so, the whole men are from Mars and, so if you look at all these things, like, yeah, technology is awesome, but in that connection space, technology is really bad.
There are so many reasons for that. And I agree with you that the pandemic in many ways accelerated a lot of this. And I mean, we wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for the pandemic. I wouldn't have been in the Connective if it wasn't for because I'm able to do this. Like, pre-COVID, the Connective would have been, if you're not at a restaurant in Hoboken at a certain time, then you're not in their group. Right. If you're not able to get your ass in a car at 6 o'clock in the morning and drive up to North Jersey and be at a restaurant for the breakfast meeting, you're not getting anything from it. So, thank goodness, Joe and other people just kind of said, this different way is just, it's not worse, it's different, and now it's like, okay, well, it actually opens up a lot more doors. It changes behaviors, changes the calculus. At the same time, it presents challenges to deep relationships, right? And I think we're learning how to surmount some of those challenges. But the rationale for that and the reason for it is manifold. I'm reading this book recently about the neuroscience of communication, and it's specific. Like when I say communication, I don't mean like generic person-to-person communication. I mean for communicators, like for people who are in PR and communications, that kind of stuff, right? But it does dig into how people communicate with each other and how kind of perceptions are established and change. And I'm still early in the book. It's fantastic. Dr. Laura McHale, she's going to be on the show a couple months from now. But anyway,
that's awesome. Yeah, that's
one of the reasons why I'm reading the book. But the other reason is because my day job is as a head of communications, and boy, oh boy, this stuff is really going to help me.
Real and dear to your heart, absolutely.
Near and dear. What's interesting though is like some of the pieces for our conversation here. Some of the pieces that I'm learning about, the way that we as humans react to this digital world and to to this kind of virtual virtual kind of contact, virtual communication and stuff. Now, thankfully, video conferencing and we're clearly talking to each other on video. Our listeners are not going to see it; it's audio only. But like, I don't think I could have a really open and meaningful conversation. I could have a good conversation with anybody on the phone. I think, I mean, I'm a talker,
right?
But really like looking for the cues, right? Understanding, okay, this is a question that, Adrian is like digging, or this, I see Adrian wants to get in on this answer, right? I mean, I have to see it. So I'm not,
visual.
Visual. I'm very visual, and those visual cues are really important, I think. But humans are, like in general, no matter whether you think you are or not, you're hardwired instinctively to pick up on visual cues. And one of the cool things that I've picked up in the book is this whole thing about Zoom fatigue, right? So, and I think I've mentioned this on Connective once, but Zoom fatigue is when, people think it's because they're having meeting after meeting on Zoom and it's just, oh man, I got another Zoom call. Now there's a little bit of that, like you're not giving yourself enough rest between meetings, but that's a time management problem. It's not a Zoom problem.
Right.
The Zoom fatigue is in many ways coming from, we can just kind of rename that video conferencing fatigue because it happens with any video platform. The reason that it happens, one of the big reasons is very likely because you are spending a lot of time looking at yourself and the other person. So your mind, neurologically is struggling, has to put in a lot more effort to focus on the conversation that you're having. So think about it this way. If you are in a conference room in real life, right? And I'm talking to Adrian in a conference room. I mean, maybe there are places like this, but there's a really, 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 really good chance that there's no mirror behind Adrian, right? I'm just looking at you. And that allows me to focus on you, allows me to see your cues. But if there's a mirror there, or if I'm there, I'm just keep maybe surreptitiously looking at myself and saying, is my hair in the right place? Am I giving off the right cues? You can't help it. You can't help but look at yourself.
No, as I sit here, I have to literally like almost like focus and say like, no, I don't exist on this other half of the window.
Yes, exactly. Right. But yet, instinctively, you're just going to occasionally your eyes are going to go back to the other, and that's fine. That's normal. But it does take a certain amount of energy. And so after you do this all day, like you don't realize it's happening. You start to get exhausted. Now that affects your relationships because you're not focusing like you should be on somebody else's cues.
Right.
And you can still develop a deep relationship with somebody on Zoom. I have a team of people that I got to know entirely virtually. And yeah, the nature of our relationship is maybe a little different than it would have been had we been in person from the get-go. But I got to know them and even the Connective people, I get to know them on Zoom, right? I mean, I get to know them that way. I feel comfortable with them. I'm sure that that's going to make that in-person meeting even sweeter and better, right? I know that. But yet, we can have that. We can build relationships like through like virtually. At the same time, we're limited because of that. There's always like this focus issue, and that's just one of the things. Like,
well, and and the senses, right? At the end of the day, I mean, as far back as the reason we have smell and touch and vision and taste, like all of those are stimuli that help us determine, hey, do I trust this person? Hey, do I want to be around this person? Do I like this person? Is this so?
Exactly.
And so ultimately, we have our ears and our eyes when it comes to Zoom, and that's it.
Right. And anyway, that's one of the many factors, right? That's, I think, changing the way that we have been interacting and the evolution, I suppose, of how we connect with one another, which is sort of back to where we were talking about, how you're seeing change in the way that we connect. Obviously, it's really helped with organizations like ours, or our organizations have helped people belong. Like I like to look at it the other way. The technology has aided the development and the acceleration of these kinds of platforms, right?
Absolutely.
But it's really that the people have wanted to connect more because of
they long for connection
because of loneliness and solitude.
Yeah, it's the catch to listen. For every girl that would say my social life is better because I can see what all my friends are doing now and communicate easier with them, because it used to be you didn't have a phone until you were older, and now you got one at 10 years old. There's equal number of kids that say, you know what, I feel lonely and not connected because I'm watching everybody else, but I don't have those genuine connections.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it is the world we live in. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But I do think, it requires some thought and some energy. And yeah, I mean, we are what we hope is the next generation of, it is a digital tool. It is, but hopefully it does bridge that gap a little bit.
Yeah. And, look, we're of an age. Younger generation today, they're digital natives. Obviously they go to school with each other, and well, now for a couple of years they didn't, but now they go to school with each other.
Right.
And they're social, and they know what it's like to be person to person. And I think at some point they're going to realize that as human people, as animals, essentially biological beings, that person to person, in person connection, touch, sight, feel, smell, all these things. I'm still waiting for that study on how pheromones affect like connections, because you can't get that over. That's the one thing you absolutely cannot get through this stuff.
Well, I can tell you as a single guy, right, in dating, I mean, like, and really all technology. So I remember, and I referenced kind of the over reliance on digital stuff recently. I find that's huge in marketing, right?
Yeah.
People are like, oh, I'm going to use this tool, and I'm going to, this will help my SEO, and then this will help my, top of the funnel, and then this will help me convert. And yet, at the end of the day, now this is not for products, for easy buys, but for anything that's either an expensive or a difficult buy, it still all comes to the person, right? Some sort of connection, right? So you can spend all your money on digital marketing you want, for most, and this is not, everywhere. it's going to come to the person, right? And same thing with like online dating, right? You can go through all these tools and you can talk and whatever, and then yet when you come and meet, like it's either you're going to know it or not.
Yeah.
So it's still, no matter what we do digitally, it still comes down to the people.
That relationship,
Yeah.
And I was just thinking about, again, the young people, just to finish that thought, is that they are increasingly accustomed to meeting and making relationships, what they consider to be relationships, right? We may have different definitions a little bit now, and
Right.
hopefully they'll come our way eventually. But like they build what they believe to be relationships entirely in virtual worlds, entirely online. And it doesn't necessarily mean virtual reality, but it could at some point.
Yeah.
Look at, I don't know, like I hear a lot about Roblox. My kids are too old for that. But Minecraft for sure. Like they have friends in Minecraft. They have friends in whatever social media platforms, of course. But interactive communities, I'm starting to play around with the metaverse myself, just because I think we need to have it. Not that we need to have it, because it's coming and we need to know how to deal with
Correct.
it. But that's going to also change the way that we relate and connect, and you're right. So all these things are happening. The Connective is a sort of beacon in the darkness in some ways for, I think, for like that intentful, meaningful connection that is for business. It's focused. Right. Do you see the Connective growing even more in these kind of on other platforms? Or do you think that there's?
I do.
Yeah.
And especially like I said, with economic pressure, I mean, I truly believe that networking is the best marketing tactic, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, it always goes back to, networking is 36% more to close. 85% of buying decisions start with networking, like with a referral. So, as marketing budgets tighten, as companies look for how to continue with with a good ROI on their marketing, I think networking becomes even more important.
Yeah.
So the Connective will grow. We'll grow slowly and carefully. Again, making sure it's the right caliber of person, the right intentionality of person, the right types of businesses, the right locations. But I think we will. Our goal is 150 by the end of this year, and and I don't see why we wouldn't continue to grow that throughout next year.
It seems modest to me, which was probably a good thing, right? It's a conservative goal.
It is.
Yeah.
And listen, I mean, even as we're fundraising now, Joe and I are very modest. Like, listen, and it's funny. I've had multiple people be like, you should show a lot more. And I'm like, you know what? Like at the end of the day, not everything's a unicorn. Right. And so Joe and I are like, this is what we're comfortable thinking that we can actually achieve, which is still, don't get me wrong. I mean, we're projected at like a $300 million valuation in 2026. But again, like, it's a projection. It's a guess. Right. And people are like, no, that's too low. And I'm like, come on, like how many of those do you really have?
Well, now that you mentioned 300 million valuation, I can't, like, I'm not on the business side of any of this stuff. I mean, I trust you. I think that there's so much value in it, from a person to person level. I think that as we, I suppose, establish more chapters, each chapter will have, I imagine, a maximum number of people. And that's how, that's the way it goes, make bubbles. And since it is primarily virtual, the kind of geolocation chapters, I guess, would only really come into play when it comes to the meeting capacities and offline events, right? Like in real life events.
The occasional, let's meet for happy hour. Yeah.
But you could cross over into other chapters, I suppose. I mean, I know I'm always invited to Karina's calls and Nikki, when Philadelphia gets going, I mean,
that is one of the ways that we differentiate ourselves, is that you are not limited to your small community, right? Like, we want you to, kind of meet everybody. Now, again, it does require that relationship, right? Because just meeting somebody once, I mean, I'll leave the name out of it. So we have somebody that's in the insurance and life insurance. And the very first time I met her, I was like, oh, okay, well, she's very nice, whatever.
Yeah.
Second time I met her, I started to be like, okay, now I feel more comfortable with what she does. And it wasn't until the third time that I met her that I found out that she specializes in families with special needs kids. And it was like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, now I'm like, my sister is a special ed teacher. Like, I have that connection with you now.
Yeah.
Like, if I hear anybody that's talking insurance special needs, it's like, I know exactly who to send them to. And it took 3 conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. It's relationship first, and the business second, which is really important. But you always know that the business is there. People always ask with interest and intent what's going on. And but anyway, I was sort of going to make a little lightness of this whole thing by just kind of making a request, because I see that we're getting sort of towards the end of our chat here. But if it's valued at 300 million, I mean, I think some of us who have been grandfathered in from like the early days, maybe a little piece of that pie, a little share, perhaps. I don't know. We'll just put that out there. You don't have to answer me now. You don't have to answer me now.
I'll see what we can do.
Our stick-to-itiveness, seeing, should be kind of maybe rewarded. I don't know. Just,
you know what? I like
just put it out there.
Listen, I'm not against it. I mean, listen, it goes back to the intentionality of this group, right? And I'm not saying that I'm doing this, but what I am saying is that, we're givers. Like at the end of the day, like Joe and I are, neither one of us or any of our leaders that run chapters are really thinking about themselves. Like we like to think of other people. And I mean, at the end of the day, it goes back to what I said in the very beginning. I'm not a money person. I want to build a company that I can look back and say, you know what? A lot of people, that helped a lot of people. Right. And that's truly my goal. That's my definition of success.
Joe's been on the show. He echoes all those things. And anybody who's listened to that episode knows what a genuine person he is, what a sincere person he is.
Right.
And also knows that, he's a serial entrepreneur and in a good way, he's building successful businesses, and having your operational expertise come in to play it's like almost like a marriage made in heaven, to be trite.
It's been good so far.
Yeah. And I've had plenty of people on the show from the Connective, speaking with Desh Ers recently. And I mean, and Rich Shapiro, I mean, these guys, I would never have had the opportunity to meet people who are that kind of accomplished,
right?
In their field, in normal circumstances.
Yeah, true subject matter experts.
Unbelievable, right? And I'm just excited. I learned something every time. So anyway, I think the future is really bright. I think that I liked what you said about pouring gasoline on something like that growth engine.
Right.
And you as a business mechanic, I mean, it does make sense. I see that happening in the Connective. I am. I certainly am behind Noladex, and count on my support for that as a member. And certainly we've been talking about it. So, hey, we've been publicizing it a little bit already, but
Absolutely.
that wasn't the point of this whole thing. I mean, really, I really wanted to get down to, what is connection? What are business connections? What's a business community like? And I think we hit on a lot of that. And I think there's a lot more to say. So, at some point you're going to have to come back and we'll talk about this again.
I love it. I mean, even before we started recording, we were talking community.
Absolutely.
Right? How community is, they stick together, right? Like, and so, I mean, that is one of the greatest things about being a human being is the ability to kind of work within these communities.
The model of behavior, of business, of relationships, of human interaction is evolving and changing. Without getting too kind of woo-woo about the whole thing, we are, we're moving beyond this idea that we have to lay down before a brand or before an authority, and we're moving far more towards smaller is better.
Yeah.
Personal is better. Tribal is better. And we will be operating far more effectively, or more kind of, I guess, economically more powerfully as a community, as smaller communities, and as individuals than as brands. Brands are in trouble.
That's our hope, is that we support those kind of small businesses, that don't have the money. Because I actually think the education system's broken when it comes to, as a marketing guy within marketing, you learn big brand marketing. That is what is taught in school. And yet the majority of businesses never reach that level, right? So they can't go and spend, hundreds of thousands and put billboards or buy digital, that's not how it works.
But anybody can join a community that, as long as they're a decent person, as long as the values are there and they share that affinity with the community. And there's no economic barrier to entry, I guess, for a lot of communities. I mean, more and more, some might be charging a little bit. We'll see.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, actually, all that said, there is a slight barrier to entry to the Connective as a community, but it's more of a
it's low enough
symbol.
and we talk about it.
It's more symbolic.
It's low enough that it keeps the sweat in the game. You know, like you
Yeah.
gotta have your skin in the game. Sorry, I mean, like you gotta have a little skin in the game. But not so high that we would chase people away.
Absolutely. And I'm glad to have some skin in this. And on that note, pouring gas on the Connective, not to burn it, but to grow it, pouring gas into it, fuel it.
Correct. Maybe I should say pouring fertilizer. I'll change it up. Or I'm pouring fertilizer on it.
Or we're fueling up the tank. There's a lot of metaphors. I like to mix them up a little bit, but we're going to grow the thing, and I'm happy to be part of it in whatever way I am. And I'm just pleased to have met you and to meet the great people in the Connective. Keep giving me a whole lot of things to think about, and hopefully keep giving my listeners a lot of things to consider and think about, as you certainly have today, Adrian. And just want to say again, Adrian Sasine, so great for you to be here. Anybody out there who is interested in learning more about Adrian, go find him on LinkedIn. His name will be spelled properly in the episode title. Also, go to connective.me to learn more about the Connective, or look up the Connective on LinkedIn as well. So, wherever you look for Adrian, I'm sure you can find the Connective as well. And is there anything else, any place else I missed there, Adrian? I think those are the main places.
No,
right.
I mean, listen, I like to end every conversation with how can I help you? Right. And again, it goes back to the, if I'm helping other people, I truly believe that it will come around. And if there is a listener out there that, oh my God, I'm struggling with my business, or, I would love a resource like that, then reach out. I mean, I give more free coaching than I care to admit, because at the end of the day, I just want people to be happy, successful. Yeah.
You heard it here, folks. And remember, Adrian is basically like 100% in the Connective. So any of the coaching that he's doing is almost out of the kindness of his own heart.
Absolutely.
Great. Always a giver, service mentality. These are also the keywords that we're seeing in our groups. And that's why I like to talk to you guys and have you on. So thanks for giving me and sharing your time so much today, Adrian. I really appreciate it. And come back anytime.
Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
You got it, man. Take care.
Bye.
All right. Thanks for listening to the Dan Nessel Show. I hope you really enjoyed this episode. People always ask me, why do I do the show? I do it for the ratings. I do it for your validation. So do me a favor. Go over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or someplace else, wherever you're listening to podcasts, and subscribe, leave a review, rate me, and share with your friends. Anything you can do to spread the word, I deeply appreciate it. Thanks again for listening to The Dan Nessel Show.